want to start with awareness of how bias can impact others. Sometimes people may think that incidents of unintentional bias seem relatively minor. After all, is it extremely harmful to assume that a woman is a nurse rather than a doctor, or to walk on the other side of the street from a black person? A big part of the issue is that individual incidents are not isolated experiences. In the context of race, many black people report that even if a single instance of bias may not be catastrophic when considered in isolation, the frequency and accumulation of many bias incidents over time is exhausting and can be overwhelming. Imagine a white person who, the majority of the time, doesn't express bias when they encounter black people. After all, what we're discussing here is that we are all vulnerable to bias, which is not to say that every type of bias will happen every time it can happen. From this white person's perspective, a given incident of bias seems rare and isolated. Within the broader context, however, white people outnumber black people in the US by a large margin. So even if most white people express bias very infrequently, most black people end up experiencing bias constantly. Many conflicts and misunderstandings could be avoided if people could bridge the gap in perceiving bias as rare and isolated incidents versus frequent incidents that have cumulative effects. One of the main things stereotypes do is guide our expectations about others. For instance, there's a common stereotype that men are better at math and science than women. In a research study, actual professors in science fields were asked to evaluate an applicant for a lab manager position. All professors saw the exact same resume, except half of the professors saw it with a male name, while the other half saw a female name. They were asked to rate how competent and hireable the person was, and how much they'd be willing to mentor them. Here are the ratings when the application had a male name, and here are the ratings of the exact same application, but with a female name. When the application had a female name, all these ratings were lower than when it had a male name. Stereotypes create expectations that pull up the ratings of the men and pull down the ratings of the women. The researchers also asked what kind of salary the applicant deserved. And again, when the application had a male name, people said it deserved a higher salary than when the exact same application had a female name. The professors in this study were both men and women, and this pattern doesn't change when you only look at the responses of the women professors. Stereotypes set up powerful expectations that can undermine our best intentions and have very consequential outcomes. Our brains like it when people match our expectations and don't like it when people violate expectations. This is because our brains don't want to put a lot of work and energy into rewiring well-learned mental associations and habits. This idea is core to how bias operates. Say we're evaluating applicants for police chief, a very stereotypically male role. Stereotypes will lead us to expect that a man will be better in that role than a woman. When we consider a man for that position, it matches the expectations and gives us a good gut feeling, a positive impression. And when we consider a woman, we'll have a bit of a bad gut feeling because she violates the expectations. And that good or bad impression becomes the starting point for all our decisions about this position. A research study looked at this process using resumes that had either female or male names. Participants each evaluated a man's and a woman's resume to be a police chief. They either saw the man with more street smarts kinds of credentials and a woman with more academic credentials, or the reverse, with the man having academic and the woman having street smarts credentials. In the end, whatever credentials the man had ended up being the most important for being a police chief. If participants saw the man with street smarts, they explained why his street smarts were crucial for a police chief and why the woman's academic credentials weren't so important. But participants who saw the man with academic credentials justified their preference by saying just how important academic credentials were and how the woman's street smarts were less important for being a police chief. This is impression justification. Basically, the stereotypic expectations set up the good or bad gut feeling, and everything else follows from there. Impression justification can be especially worrisome because in the end, people have a decision that seems very objective after they've built a reasonable story around why the man is the right person for the job. But in fact, the whole process was put in motion by their gut impression arising from stereotypes. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. To be notified of when we post new videos, click the bell icon to turn on notifications. You can also go to biashabit.com to learn more, to donate, to sign up for our newsletter, or to contact us about evidence-based bias and DEI trainings. Thank you.